37-year-old Erika Lloyd was the loving mother of a 12-year-old son who lived in Walnut Creek, California. 2020 was a difficult year for her, as she was unable to work because she was a hairstylist, and salons were shut down for months due to the pandemic, and she struggled with the stresses of helping her son with distance learning. Therefore, she decided to go on a camping trip to Joshua Tree National Park, 7 hours away from her home, in June, hoping that the time alone in nature would help her cope with the pressure she was under. Erika left for her trip on Sunday, June 14th, and it was confirmed that she reached the park. However, on June 16th, Erika abruptly stopped communicating with her family. That same day, California Highway Patrol found Erika's vehicle near the intersection of Shelton Road and Highway 62, near 29 Palms. It appeared Erika had last been driving back to the nearby national park, as it was facing south. The car had been vandalized, with its radio and front and back windshields found smashed in. In addition to the vandalism, there were also indications that the disabled vehicle had been in an accident. Its airbag had deployed, and it had damage to its undercarriage. The owners of the company that towed away the car believed it had hit a large object, potentially the berm of the road, due to the fact that the car's radiator and the AC condenser had been smashed backwards. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department did not believe that there were any signs of foul play at the scene where the car was found. A massive air and ground search was launched for Erika, with volunteers, park rangers, and members of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department participating in the effort. All-terrain vehicles and search dogs were also brought in. Erika's camping equipment was located at a campsite at the Jumbo Rocks campground. Caves and mines in the area were searched for any sign of Erika. Erika's parents made multiple trips to California from their home in Maryland to help with the search and to put up flyers. A witness did report a sighting of a woman matching Erika's description, walking along Highway 62 with another person a week after Erika went missing, but this woman has not been conclusively proven to be Erika. Erika's family feared that she may have sustained a head injury when her car was in the accident and wandered off either disoriented or suffering from memory loss. Despite ongoing efforts, Erika remained missing for months. On January 31st, 2021, hikers discovered what they believed to be human skeletal remains. They called in their discovery, and deputies from the Morongo Basin Sheriff Station were dispatched to the scene. They confirmed that the remains were human. Detectives from the Specialized Investigations Division removed the remains from the scene, and a forensic odontologist was able to use dental records to identify the remains as belonging to Erika Lloyd. The cause and manner of her death have not been determined. The Sheriff Department's investigation is ongoing. Erika's remains were found in a desert field approximately 1/4 of a mile east of the 5200 block of Danby Road in Wonder Valley. If Erika had stayed on roads as she walked away from where her car had been found, she would have walked 8 miles to reach the location where her remains were ultimately located. If she had instead headed out into the desert, she would have covered 6 miles before reaching that location. Erika's brother Colin posted on the Facebook page that had been dedicated to the search for Erika, announcing the discovery of her remains and thanking the numerous people and organizations who had helped look for her. Right now is the time for grieving, and I encourage everyone to pause and reflect on the beautiful soul we've lost, our Erika, he further wrote in the post. Remember her, cherish her memory, celebrate moments past, and laugh. She would always make you laugh. Erika adored everyone. She left a bright smile on everyone's heart. She would remind you of who you truly were and how important and loved you were. She warmed your soul. Let us hold her spirit dearly and allow it to work through us to serve others, what she would want us to do. Between 1991 and 2006, a string of violent rapes was committed across 6 counties in Northern California. Authorities believed, based on details consistent across all the attacks, that all of them were committed by the same man, who came to be known as the NorCal rapist. He would break into the homes of young women, usually of Asian descent, and spend hours assaulting them. He often used either a knife or a gun, or promises that he had such a weapon to subdue them, and would then bind them with handcuffs, rope, or zip ties, and put tape over their eyes. Several of his victims managed to injure him as they fought to get away. One victim briefly broke free of her restraints and stabbed him in the arm with a pair of scissors. He took her bedding with him in an effort to not leave evidence behind, but he failed to take a pillowcase, which had his blood on it. Another victim grabbed the knife he had with him, cutting her hand in the process, but breaking off its tip, which she used to stab him just above his right eye. The rapist would sometimes kidnap his victims, taking them to ATMs and forcing them to withdraw cash. He would also ransack his victims' homes looking for valuables, sometimes taking their bank cards to withdraw cash from ATMs himself. He used various threats to try to prevent his victims from going to the police, leaving a note reading, "Don't call the cops," with an arrow pointing to the victim's mother's address and phone number in her address book, and telling another victim the location where she worked, and then threatening that he would show co-workers photographs he had taken of her during her assault. Authorities had DNA from all but one of the crime scenes, which confirmed that those victims had been attacked by the same man. Some of the DNA evidence came not from the sexual assault kits, but from the assailant's blood left behind when the victim fought back. However, the DNA profile was not in any criminal database. In 2018, therefore, authorities used genetic genealogy to try to use the DNA to identify their suspect. The DNA profile was uploaded into GEDmatch, a genealogy database, and familial matches were identified. By constructing family trees of the individuals who shared DNA with the rapist, authorities were eventually able to identify a suspect based on the amount of DNA he shared with the individuals identified through GEDmatch. They collected a drinking straw that suspect threw away and compared the DNA found on it to the profile found at the crime scenes. It was a match. On September 20th, 2018, 58-year-old Roy Charles Waller of Benicia, California, was arrested as he came into work at UC Berkeley, where he had worked since 1992, employed as a safety specialist. He was married and a father. At the time of his arrest, Waller was initially only charged with 12 counts of forced sexual assault in connection to the final attack attributed to the NorCal rapist. By the time his trial began in October of 2020, however, he was charged with a total of 46 felonies. While he went to trial for raping 9 women, DNA also linked him to a further 8 cases throughout Northern California. All 9 of the women Waller was accused of raping and attacking testified at his trial, as did numerous members of law enforcement and sexual assault forensic nurse examiners who had worked on the case. Many of them were now retired, and several of them had traveled from out of state to testify. In addition to the DNA, prosecutors also presented further evidence discovered after Waller's arrest. In a storage unit he rented, they found a ski mask, zip ties, 2 tasers, condoms, duct tape, and handcuffs. There was also a duffel bag containing more than 20 pairs of women's underwear, including 1 pair that matched a pair that had been taken from the home of a victim during a NorCal rapist attack. Waller testified on his own behalf and claimed that he had some of the items in the storage unit because he was a collector of odd things, and others because of a relationship he previously had with a particularly wild girlfriend. Waller had also posted several Craigslist ads over the years, looking for young, female Asian roommates. On the stand, he claimed he had done so as favors for the daughters of various former girlfriends, although he claimed to not remember any of their names. While he said he had met those women through profiles they had posted on dating sites, he claimed that they had needed his help posting the housing ads online. When questioned as to why he had compiled a database on his computer, listing the physical descriptions of various women, the vehicles they drove, their addresses, and notations about whether or not they lived in ground-floor apartments, Waller said he had simply kept a list of people he hoped to introduce himself to. The prosecution maintained that Waller had a faint scar above his right eye, where one victim had stabbed her attacker, but Waller's defense maintained that there was no such scar. Waller rolled up his sleeve during his testimony to show that he had only a round scar from a paintballing accident on his arm, and no signs that he had been stabbed there with scissors by one of the victims. When asked to explain how his DNA ended up at almost all of the crime scenes, Waller said he had never been to any of them, and that he was not a DNA expert. Other testimony given during the trial detailed how Waller had ties to other evidence in the case, and how he had come to talk to authorities about the case more than a decade before his arrest. Following the last attack attributed to the NorCal rapist, in which he assaulted and raped 2 female roommates for hours in their North Natomas apartment in 2006, police were able to locate security camera footage in the neighborhood, which showed a white Toyota 4Runner they believed may have been involved in the attack. They then visited numerous Toyota dealerships, and salespeople helped them narrow down the vehicle in the footage as being a higher-end model made between 1999 and 2002. Then, police searched vehicle registrations in Northern California to identify owners of white 4Runners from those model years. Members of various departments in the area began the ambitious task of speaking with thousands of people who owned such vehicles. They conducted thousands of interviews, distributed thousands of questionnaires, and took voluntary DNA samples from over 100 men. On February 11, 2007, Sacramento Police Detective Jimmy Vigon and his partner went to the home of a nurse in Fairfield to speak with her about her 4Runner. Her boyfriend at the time, who lived with her part-time, was also at the home. He was Roy Charles Waller. They did not ask for a DNA cheek swab from him, however. One of the 2 victims in the final attack had briefly caught a glimpse of the perpetrator when her blindfold slipped, and helped develop a composite sketch. Vigon and his partner did not think Waller resembled the sketch, and believed him to be too old and too heavy to be the man in it. They left a questionnaire for the nurse to fill out after their conversation, and left. Following his testimony about this interaction, Detective Vigon told the Sacramento Bee that he wishes he had asked for a DNA swab from Waller at that time. He hoped, however, that his meeting with Waller was not without benefit, even though it did not lead to an arrest at the time. Since the North Natomas attack was the last attributed to the NorCal rapist, he believed this interaction with authorities may have scared Waller into ceasing his crime spree. The nurse also testified at the trial. She had traveled to the Philippines for a funeral, although it is unclear if she was out of the country at the exact time of the 2006 dual attack, freeing Waller to use her vehicle, which she had access to, without her knowledge. On November 18, 2020, the jury returned their verdict after just 2.5 hours of deliberation. They found Waller guilty of all of the 46 charges against him, which included charges of kidnapping, forcible rape, oral copulation, sodomy, and foreign penetration. "It didn't matter what I did," Waller's defense attorney, Joe Farina, said following the announcement of the verdict. "It was a DNA case. We could not overcome the fact that his DNA was at nearly all the crime scenes." He also said that his client had not shared his concerns about how seriously the jury would take the DNA evidence, saying Waller never seemed to understand it was a DNA case. He thought he was going to be acquitted. He denied having anything to do with it. Waller's sentencing hearing was held on December 18, 2020. 5 of his victims addressed the court during it. One of the roommates from the double attack in 2006 told the court that she had showered without feeling afraid for the first time following her assault on the day of Waller's arrest in 2018, because she no longer had to worry about him breaking into her home again. She also pointed out that Waller had not expressed any remorse or apologized to any of his victims. She revealed that his daughter, on the other hand, had reached out to her and apologized for her father's actions. Nicole Ernest Pate, believed to be Waller's first victim, told the court he should experience the barbaric sense of time around him, knowing that this is his fate will set me free for good. Following the statements from the victims, the judge imposed 2 terms, one of 459 years and one of 438 years to life. The sentences are to run consecutively, giving Waller a total sentence of 897 years to life. The judge ruled that Waller would not be eligible for parole, both because he considered him to be a serious danger to society and because he had presented blatantly false testimony at trial. Waller maintains his innocence and plans to appeal his conviction. 40-year-old Rosalio Gutierrez Jr. lived in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and was a loving father of 2 children. with whom he spent every other weekend. He was very outgoing, had lots of friends, and loved spending time outdoors. The last confirmed sighting of Rosalio occurred on Sunday, May 17, 2020, when he dropped his daughter off in Twin Lakes, a town 25 miles west of Kenosha. His last communication came at 8:27 that evening, when he sent a text to a friend, asking them to come over to his apartment. However, when they arrived at 9:37, he did not answer the door, despite repeated knocks on the door, phone calls, and text messages. Rosalio failed to report to his job as a contractor in Lake County, Illinois, on May 18th or 19th, which was highly unusual. Rosalio had been dating a woman at the time, and she became concerned when she could not get in contact with him. She therefore went to his apartment in the 3700 block of 15th Street to check on him. When she arrived, the sliding glass patio door was open. She looked inside and saw that the furniture was out of place, as though there had been an altercation in the apartment, and a large area rug was missing. There was also a large amount of fresh blood on the floor and on some pieces of furniture. She immediately called the police. Rosalio's vehicles were parked outside of his apartment, and his cell phone had been left behind. Upon hearing of the disappearance, Rosalio's mother and stepfather, Celia and Eugene Patterson, immediately began the drive to Wisconsin from their home in Colorado to help search for him. Celia moved to the area as her son's disappearance dragged on, both to be close to the investigation and to spend time with their grandchildren, who were missing their father. While they could not quickly locate Rosalio, authorities did quickly identify an individual with a motive to harm him. On May 21st, 2 days after Rosalio was reported missing, 39-year-old Zachariah Anderson of Mequon, Wisconsin, was charged with 2 felonies for stalking his ex-girlfriend, who was also the mother of his children, and her current boyfriend. That woman's name has not been disclosed in the media because of the stalking case, but the boyfriend Anderson was accused of stalking was Rosalio Gutierrez Jr. In the criminal complaint against Anderson, the woman claims that he was aware of her relationship with Rosalio and did not approve of it. She believed he had been tracking her movements and following her, based on places she saw him and information he had about her movements and private conversations. When police interviewed Anderson's daughter, she told them that she had seen items that had been stolen from Rosalio's car while it was parked outside of her mother's home, including a letter and his car registration, in her father's possession. Her father had also given her a phone and instructed her to use it to record her mother. Examination of that phone revealed that it had been used to order tracking devices from Amazon on April 21st. The girl also said that Anderson admitted to her that he had been videotaping her mother and Rosalio. Anderson denies these charges, and his defense attorney told the court that his former girlfriend had previously made false allegations against him. She had unsuccessfully petitioned for a restraining order against him in the past. Anderson told detectives that he was jealous of his former girlfriend's relationship with Rosalio, but denied tracking her movements, recording her, or stealing from Rosalio. He claimed his daughter had simply lied to the police, and that he had never even met Rosalio. Anderson remained in custody on the stalking charges until December of 2020, when they were formally dropped. Anderson was then charged with 2 new counts of stalking, as well as with hiding a body and first-degree intentional homicide. While authorities had not located Rosalio, they believed they had a strong enough circumstantial case to try Anderson for his murder without a body. Anderson was held without bond. Authorities had examined Anderson's minivan and discovered that its rear seats had been removed. Carpet in the back of the van had been cut away, and there was evidence that bleach had been used to clean it. 1 speck of blood was found in the car that had not been washed away, however, and DNA proved that the blood belonged to Rosalio Gutierrez Jr. It was after the DNA evidence was processed that Anderson was charged with murder. In addition to Anderson's minivan, police had also searched a burn pit near his home with cadaver dogs. They alerted on a burned bottle of bleach and what was left of several pieces of clothing, including the elastic band from a pair of underwear, buttons that came from Levi Strauss jeans, and steel-toed boots. According to one of Anderson's former partners, he had borrowed a pair of steel-toed boots from her grandfather and never returned them. Authorities found another burn pit during a search of a tree farm Anderson's family owned in Saukville, and found in it remnants of fabric that matched the color and pattern of a shirt Anderson had been witnessed wearing as he left home on May 17th, the day Rosalio went missing. Surveillance footage also shows Anderson purchasing 2 bags of 13-gallon garbage bags, 2 bags of latex gloves, 2 containers of bleach, and some items of food at a Walmart in Saukville the day after Rosalio's disappearance. His cell phone records from that day place him in the area of Cedar Beach Road from 8:45 a.m. to 11:41 p.m. This location is approximately 10 miles from his family tree farm and within half a mile of both Lake Michigan and a deep, water-filled quarry. Despite all the circumstantial evidence that Anderson murdered Rosalio and potential clues as to where he may have disposed of his body, it has still not been found. While they believe they know what happened to Rosalio, his family is distressed by the fact that they still do not know where he is. No one deserves this, Rosalio's mother told the Kenosha News after the homicide charge was filed against Anderson. No one deserves for a life to be taken and then, to make matters worse, not to be able to mourn over his body and give him a decent and Christian burial.